Imagine for a second a professional. We will call him Dave.
Okay.
Now, Dave is an absolute wizard. I mean, he has spent the last 10 years completely immersed in the technical intricacies of enterprise systems. He literally dreams in Python and Bash scripts.
We all know a Dave.
Right. He knows the server architecture so intimately that he can practically diagnose a network latency issue just by, like, the sound the cooling fans are making in the data center.
It's a real talent.
It is. And when the digital infrastructure inevitably goes down at 2 in the morning on a holiday weekend, Dave is the ultimate firefighter. He logs in, tapes a few elegant lines of code, and saves the company millions of dollars in downtime.
He is the hero of the department.
Exactly. Universally, across the entire organization, Dave is recognized as a superstar. He is the person everyone calls when things break. So management does what management always does with superstars.
They promote him.
They promote him. They make him an executive. And here is the terrifying high-stakes scenario you have to consider. Imagine realizing that the exact skills that built Dave's reputation, the flawless coding, the heroic late-night firefighting, the deep tactical troubleshooting, are the exact same things that will completely destroy his career the moment he steps into that leadership role.
It is, it's honestly one of the most jarring transitions a professional can ever go through.
Yeah.
You spend your entire adult life sharpening a very specific set of tools. You measure your self-worth by your ability to use those tools better than anyone else in the room. And then overnight, you are handed a new title, and you find out that the game has changed entirely.
Totally different game.
Not only are your favorite tools no longer what you need to win, but if you keep trying to use them, you will actually sabotage your own team.
That paradox is exactly what we are focusing on today. Welcome to Bits and Bytes in Business. I am your host, and today we are doing a deep dive into episode 10 of our series, titled From SysAdmin to CIO, The Leadership Pipeline.
It is a huge topic.
It really is. And before we get too deep into the weeds, I want to take a quick second to ask you, the listener, to please like, subscribe, and share Bits and Bytes in Business. If you stay connected with us, you are going to gain actionable, real-world insights into navigating these exact types of career hurdles.
Absolutely.
Also, make sure to check out my YouTube channel for access to full course materials, video deep dives, and other discussions to help you stay on the cutting edge of tech leadership. We want you to grow with us.
There is so much good stuff on there.
Thanks. So getting back to our mission for this deep dive, we are unpacking an exhaustive, forward-looking 2026 research report called From SysAdmin to CIO, The Leadership Pipeline and Strategic Innovation.
And it is a phenomenal piece of analysis.
Yeah, because it doesn't just focus on the silicon and the software.
Right. It focuses relentlessly on the psychology of the human being who is tasked with managing that technology. It looks at the actual friction of that transition.
And that friction is exactly what we are going to explore. We are going to unpack what the research calls the missing middle of career progression, that murky swamp where careers either accelerate or completely stall out.
The swamp is real.
It is very real. We are also going to break down the highly specific 2026 executive skill sets you need, like how a CIO actually governs a corporate network when there are a billion autonomous AI agents running around making their own decisions.
Which is a logistical nightmare if you aren't prepared.
Truly. And we'll get into the nuanced debate around education and relationship capital. If you want to sit at the executive table, what exactly do you need in your arsenal? Okay, let's unpack this. Before we diagnose Dave's specific problems, we really have to understand the world he is operating in.
Right.
What does the enterprise IT landscape actually look like in 2026?
To understand the 2026 landscape, we have to completely discard the old mental models of what an IT department is supposed to be.
Throw them out entirely.
Exactly. Because if you look back 15 or 20 years, IT was fundamentally viewed as a back-end cost center. It was a basement department.
The people you call when your printer breaks.
Yeah, the business side of the house came up with the grand strategies, and IT was just there to keep the lights on, ensure the email servers didn't crash, and fix your laptop when it blue-screened. But today, that dynamic is entirely inverted.
How so?
The IT department is no longer just the custodian of the infrastructure. It is the primary architect of the organization's intelligence.
So they aren't just supporting the business. They are the business.
They're the business. The modern CIO is a direct driver of top-line corporate revenue. They are sitting in the boardroom, counseling the CEO and the board of directors on massive existential issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Geopolitical data sovereignty, complex digital risk, algorithmic bias. The traditional walls that kept IT in the basement have completely dissolved. Technology is woven into the DNA of marketing, finance, human resources, and supply chain logistics.
Which makes Dave's promotion to management incredibly complicated.
Extremely.
Because he is stepping into a role that requires an entirely different operating system for his brain. So let's dig into this identity crisis that happens when a superstar has to let go of the keyboard. Technical stars fail in leadership because they tie their entire self-worth to doing the work rather than directing it.
That is the core issue.
It makes me think of a restaurant.
Okay, I like food analogies.
Right. Imagine you have a master chef. This chef can chop onions faster and more precisely than anyone alive. Their reductions are absolute perfection. They are an artist on the line during the dinner rush. Because of this brilliance, investors hand them the keys to a massive global restaurant empire.
And this is where the crisis hits.
Exactly. Instead of looking at global supply chain logistics or negotiating with agricultural vendors or designing the training curriculum for the head chefs at their 50 new locations.
They are still in the kitchen.
Yes. Our master chef is still standing in the kitchen of their original restaurant. They are literally pushing the junior line cooks out of the way, grabbing a knife, and aggressively chopping the onions themselves.
Because chopping the onions feels good.
It feels amazing. It's tangible. It's immediate gratification. When they look at a spreadsheet for supply chain logistics, they feel incompetent and stressed. But when they chop an onion, they remember, oh, right, I am a genius.
But while they are standing there chopping onions, the rest of the restaurant empire is burning to the ground because nobody is steering the ship.
Exactly.
The research report formally defines this as the expert's trap. When highly skilled technical professionals struggle to step into leadership, it is rarely because they lack intelligence.
No, they're usually the smartest people in the room.
Right. It is because they instinctively believe their intrinsic value to the company lies in their direct, tactile execution. When they face the ambiguity and complexity of management, where problems take months to solve and success is really hard to measure, they experience a massive spike in anxiety.
So they revert back to what they know.
They do. To self-soothe, they revert back to technical troubleshooting. They retreat to their comfort zone, and by doing so, they create severe operational bottlenecks and completely smother the autonomous growth of their engineering teams.
And the data on the fallout from this trap is just grim. The sources pull from a Harvard Business Review study noting that over 50% of executives experience severe burnout.
50%.
Yeah. But I want to pause on that for a second, playing devil's advocate, because the intuitive assumption is that they are burning out because they are simply working too many hours. But that's not what the data actually says, is it?
No, the hours are a symptom, not the root cause.
Okay.
The HBR data indicates that this specific demographic of burnout originates from a profoundly flawed approach to decision-making. These transitioning leaders possess an obsessive, psychological need for direct control over their team's outputs.
They can't let go.
They suffer from an absolute inability to delegate. They are burning out because they are trying to do the full-time job of a strategic executive while simultaneously attempting to maintain the full-time job of a senior systems engineer.
That's 2 full-time jobs.
It is a completely unsustainable cognitive load. You just cannot mentally scale that way.
And the corporate failure rates reflect that brutal reality. The deep dive sources highlight DDI industry reports showing massive failure rates for new executives within their first 12 to 18 months.
The numbers are staggering.
We are looking at a 50% failure rate for external hires brought into a new company and a 35% failure rate for internal promotions. People like our hypothetical Dave, they just completely fail to meet the organization's expectations.
It is a tragic loss of high-end talent. And to understand the mechanics of why these smart people fail, the research categorizes these transitional errors into 4 primary behavioral traps.
Let's get into those.
These are the specific landmines sitting in the field during those critical first 90 days of a promotion.
I want to really spend some time exploring these 4 traps, because if you are listening to this and you are currently in that transitional phase or you are aiming for it, these are the exact behaviors you need to audit within yourself. The first one is called the lingering trap.
The lingering trap is the literal manifestation of our chef refusing to leave the kitchen.
Grabbing the knife.
Right. It occurs when a newly promoted IT leader stays far too heavily involved in the granular, daily tasks of their previous technical role. They fail to fully assume their new strategic mandate.
So what does that look like for a SysAdmin?
In the context of a sysadmin becoming a director or a CIO, it means they remain tethered to the keyboard. They are still auditing the firewall logs manually, still writing automation scripts themselves, still jumping into the Slack channels to close high-level support tickets.
I want to push back on that for a second. If I am the absolute best coder on the team and there is a critical bug in the deployment, isn't it technically faster and cheaper for the company if I just step in and fix it myself in 20 minutes rather than spending 2 hours guiding a junior engineer to do it? Why is lingering actually bad for the bottom line?
In the micro moment, yes, it is faster for you to fix it. But leadership is a macro discipline.
Macro discipline.
Every time you step in to fix that bug, you are doing two incredibly destructive things. First, you are robbing that junior engineer the developmental friction they need to become a senior engineer.
Oh, wow.
You are artificially capping your team's capability. Second, while your head is buried in the code fixing a 20-minute bug, you are neglecting your actual job.
Which is?
Scanning the horizon for the multi-million-dollar architectural shift that is going to hit your department next quarter.
You're winning the battle but losing the war.
Exactly.
So how does someone actually break out of the lingering trap? You can't just drop your tools and walk away, right? That seems irresponsible.
No, it requires a deliberate, almost surgical handover. The report outlines that you have to work explicitly with your own superiors to define strict timelines for succession.
Deadlines.
You must systematically mentor the new hires taking over your portfolio, and crucially, you have to set a hard, non-negotiable deadline for your last day of availability to perform your former technical duties.
Hard cutoff.
You have to tell your team, after Friday, do not page me for server outages unless the building is literally on fire.
That has to be so hard to do.
It takes immense humility to accept that you are no longer the one executing the code and that someone else might do it differently or even slightly worse while they learn.
It's like taking off the superhero cape and putting on the coach's jacket. It's an entirely different identity. Okay, so that is the lingering trap. The second one the sources identify is the adrenaline trap, which honestly just sounds exhausting.
It's deeply exhausting. The adrenaline trap manifests when leaders rely on the sheer brute force of their technical stamina to solve organizational problems. Think about how a superstar engineer operates. If there is a massive, catastrophic database corruption, they know they can just lock themselves in a room, stay awake for 48 hours straight, chug energy drinks, and brute force their way to a solution through sheer cognitive endurance.
I've been there. We've all been there.
When that person becomes a leader, they subconsciously try to apply that same adrenaline-fueled stamina to complex management issues.
But you cannot brute force a cultural transition across a 500-person department. You can't stay awake for 48 hours and suddenly fix a toxic team dynamic.
Precisely. Technical problems often respond well to short bursts of intense, focused energy. Organizational problems require sustained, patient, strategic pressure over months or years.
It's a different energy system entirely.
Because these new leaders are trying to sprint a marathon, they fail to replenish their own energy. And far more dangerously, they project that expectation onto their team.
That's where it gets toxic.
They push everyone to operate at a state of permanent emergency, leading to rapid systemic burnout and massive turnover.
That makes perfect sense, the permanent emergency. The third trap is the judgment trap. This one feels a bit more psychological, a bit more rooted in ego.
It involves forming premature conclusions, and it is a direct byproduct of a diagnostic mindset.
What do you mean by diagnostic mindset?
As a highly trained technical expert, your brain is wired to look at a complex system, rapidly identify the flaw, and isolate the broken component.
Right, find the broken thing and fix it.
But when you become a leader, if you jump into a new organizational role and immediately apply that aggressive diagnostic mindset to human beings and historical architectures, you alienate your entire workforce instantly.
Let's play this out with our guy, Dave.
Okay.
Dave takes over a new department. He looks at their cloud architecture, sees that it is incredibly inefficient and overly complicated, and immediately declares in a meeting, this architecture is garbage, who built this, we need to tear it down. He judges the outcome without gathering any qualitative data.
Exactly. What didn't take the time to learn is that 3 years ago, the company slashed the IT budget by 40%. Their primary vendor went bankrupt, and the engineering team worked miracles just to keep the system functional using duct tape and legacy code.
He didn't ask why.
They've judged the technical output without understanding the historical and human context. Prematurely judging team capabilities without deeply investigating the why destroys trust, before you even have a chance to build it.
Which flows perfectly into the fourth and final trap, the dogma trap.
The dogma trap occurs when an IT leader rigidly applies the past technical practices that made them successful as an individual contributor without adapting to the cultural or strategic realities of their new environment.
So treating every new problem like an old nail because you only have one hammer.
Is the classic arrogant mindset of, well, this is the framework I used at my last job to get promoted, so we're all using it here.
Even if the new company has a completely different customer base, a different risk appetite, and a different product.
Right. They are dogmatic about the method, rather than being flexible about the outcome. They prioritize their own comfort with a specific tool set over the actual needs of the business.
What's fascinating here is how all four of these traps, lingering, adrenaline, judgment, and dogma, they all seem to stem from the exact same psychological root cause, a desperate desire to maintain control.
Control is the operative word.
When you are a coder, you have absolute control over your environment. But as we pivot to look at the realities of the AI era in 2026, the very concept of control is totally outdated.
What's fascinating here is the fundamental shift in the very nature of what a technology leader manages today. When you are an engineer, you are managing deterministic binary systems.
Systems that follow rules.
Exactly. A server, a router, a piece of compiled code. These things operate predictably. If you input X, you get Y. If you type the correct command, the server obeys. But as an executive, you are managing human teams, cross-functional business departments, and highly complex organizational matrices.
And humans are not binary.
Human beings do not operate predictably. You cannot apply command and control ticketing hierarchies to human creativity, anxiety, and cross-departmental negotiation.
And that is especially true in 2026. The research points out that 70% of organizations are expected to use composite AI architectures.
It's the new standard.
We are talking about blending generative AI for content, prescriptive AI for decision-making, predictive AI for forecasting, and agentic AI for autonomous action. The technology itself has absorbed all the binary, repetitive tasks.
If AI is handling the deterministic work, the manual provisioning, the basic code generation, the level 1 security alerts, the human leader's mandate shifts drastically away from command and control.
So what is the mandate then?
Your primary job is now orchestration and empowerment. You are no longer configuring systems. You are influencing unpredictable human behavior to align with complex business outcomes.
Influence over control. That is a massive mental pivot.
It changes everything.
If I'm a rising tech leader and I hear influence over control, my first thought is, wait, if a massive cyber breach happens, the board isn't going to blame my influence. They are going to demand answers from my control. How do I survive without absolute authority?
You survive by building consensus. The report explicitly details that successful CIOs operate in highly matrixed organizations where structural dictatorial authority rarely works.
You can't just be a dictator.
You have to routinely negotiate priorities with peers, like the chief financial officer or the chief marketing officer. You cannot just mandate that the marketing department adopt a specific data platform.
Why not?
Because if you try, they will just bypass you and buy their own SaaS tools. Shadow IT. You have to secure their buy-in through presentation, storytelling, and demonstrating mutual value. You influence them by proving that your solution makes their job easier and their metrics better.
And to do that, you have to be able to speak their language. This brings up the concept of the bilingual leader, which I think is one of the most profound insights in this entire deep dive.
It is essential.
If you want to step out of the data center and take a seat in the boardroom, you have to be perfectly fluent in multiple languages. But we aren't talking about French, Mandarin, and Spanish. We are talking about speaking tech, business, and legal.
The 2026 enterprise technology leader must possess the incredibly rare fluency to translate highly complex, abstract technical realities into the concrete languages of business strategy and legal compliance.
You have to be the bridge.
You have to bridge the massive communication gap between the engineering floor and the profit and loss sheet.
Let me build a detailed scenario to really paint a picture of what this looks like in practice. Let's go back to Dave, assuming he has evolved.
Okay, Dave 2.0.
Right. Dave is the CIO. At 9 a.m., Dave is in a meeting with his core engineering architects. They are deep in the technical weeds. They're intensely debating API integration latency issues, load balancing across a hybrid cloud environment, and data sanitization protocols.
Dave's comfort zone.
Exactly. Dave speaks to them with absolute technical authority. He understands the architecture, and his engineers respect him because he isn't just a suit in an office. He knows the tech. But then, an hour later, at 10 a.m., Dave walks into a boardroom meeting with the CEO and the board of directors. Dave cannot walk in there and talk about API latency or packet loss.
No.
If he does, their eyes will glaze over and they will dismiss him as a pure technician.
He has to translate that technical reality into a business reality.
Exactly. So Dave looks at the CEO and says, our current system delays are directly causing a 5% drop in our e-commerce customer retention rates at checkout.
That gets their attention.
That latency is impacting our top-line revenue by roughly $4 million a quarter. However, by authorizing this specific architectural cloud investment, we will reduce checkout friction, recover that lost revenue, and create a faster user experience than our primary market competitor.
Brilliant.
Dave just translated API latency into market differentiation and revenue recovery.
And the translation doesn't stop there. Because at 2 p.m., Dave has a meeting with the corporate general counsel. The global regulatory landscape in 2026 is exponentially complex.
It's a minefield.
You aren't just dealing with local laws. You have stringent state-level privacy regulations, fragmented international data sovereignty mandates, and massive, sweeping frameworks like the European Union's AI Act.
Dave has to be fluent in the language of legal risk. The lawyers will come to him with a 200-page regulatory document outlining the EU AI Act's requirements for algorithmic transparency.
And the lawyers don't know how to code that.
Exactly. Dave has to take that legal mandate, translate it back into tech, and tell his engineers we need to engineer data provenance and auditability natively into our machine learning models from day one. It can't be an afterthought.
That is the essence of the bilingual, or really trilingual leader: tech, business, and legal. If you can only speak tech, you will remain an individual contributor forever.
You'll stay in the basement.
If you can only speak business, your engineering teams will view you as an imposter and you will lose their respect. The modern CIO is the ultimate corporate translator. They are the hinge between what is technologically possible, what is financially profitable, and what is legally permissible.
The ultimate translator. I love that framing. So the million-dollar question is, how do you actually get there? How do you evolve from the person fixing the server at 2 a.m. into the trilingual executive explaining EU AI compliance to the board?
It is quite the journey.
That transition doesn't happen overnight. And that brings us to section 2 of our deep dive, navigating the missing middle.
The professional journey to the C-suite is almost never a straight line. Between the tactical, hands-on execution of a junior sysadmin and the sweeping, strategic vision of a CIO lies this incredibly complex, often poorly defined developmental phase.
The missing middle.
The research calls it the missing middle. This is the crucible. This is where the majority of technical careers either stall out completely in middle management or where individuals successfully forge the architectural, financial, and organizational competencies required to survive at the top.
The report lays out a very clear timeline of mastery to help visualize this journey. It breaks career progression down into distinct cognitive phases. Let's walk through them. Years 1 through 3 is essentially the SysAdmin phase.
The foundation.
You are looking at highly localized impact. Your world is confined to managing servers, deploying virtual infrastructure, maintaining Active Directory, and responding to support tickets.
In those initial years, your work is fundamentally reactive. A system goes down, an alert flashes red, and you react to fix it. Your primary value to the company is maintaining the stability of existing operations under the direct supervision of a manager.
But then you cross a threshold into years 3 to 5. The report defines this as the infrastructure architect phase, and surviving this phase requires a monumental cognitive shift. You have to rewire how you look at time.
You move from a reactive posture to proactive systemic design.
Meaning you aren't just waiting for things to break.
You are no longer just coming into work and asking, are the servers functioning today? You have to elevate your gaze to look 1 to 3 years into the future. You are tasked with considering the long-term compounding consequences of technology investments.
Looking over the horizon.
In this phase, your mandate is to identify massive opportunities for simplification, to actively reduce the company's technical debt, and to design scalable frameworks that actually align with where the business wants to be in 36 months.
You are juggling capital costs, deployment velocity, cybersecurity integration, and trying to orchestrate data across incredibly complex hybrid cloud environments.
And crucially, this is the phase where you begin actively practicing that bilingual translation we discussed earlier. You are developing the ability to present these high-level structural concepts to non-technical stakeholders using clear, business-focused documentation.
And if you survive that, you reach years 5 and beyond, IT leadership.
The big leagues.
This is where you are handed ownership of the budget and tasked with managing enterprise-level risk. And the research emphasizes that this pivot into senior leadership is heavily, almost disproportionately, focused on financial literacy. If you want to be in the C-suite, you have to understand the mechanics of money.
It is perhaps the most tangible, unavoidable marker of surviving the missing middle, assuming total ownership of departmental budgeting.
It's not just tech anymore.
You can no longer evaluate a piece of technology solely based on its technical elegance or its feature set. You must deeply understand its impact on the organization's balance sheet, its tax liabilities, and its monthly cash flow.
Which means we need to dive into corporate finance for a moment. Specifically, we need to understand the difference between CapEx and OpEx.
A critical distinction.
The report goes into great detail on this because it is the language of the chief financial officer. Let's break this down conceptually without turning it into a dry accounting lecture. What is CapEx, or capital expenditures?
Capital expenditures refer to the massive funds a company uses to acquire, upgrade, and maintain major physical assets. Historically in the IT world, this meant buying heavy iron,
The big physical stuff.
purchasing physical server racks, massive network switches, enterprise-grade firewalls, and permanent, perpetual software licenses. These are large, one-time, upfront financial investments.
You are buying the actual house, not just renting a room.
Precisely. And financially, because you own these tangible assets, they are capitalized on the company's balance sheet, rather than being expensed entirely in the year you bought them.
They depreciate.
Their cost is depreciated or spread out over their useful operational life, which might be 3 to 5 years. This heavily impacts how a company plans its long-term finances.
The sources mention the specific formula a CFO uses to track this. CapEx equals current period property, plant, and equipment minus prior period PP&E plus depreciation. But we don't need to memorize the math. We need to understand the strategy. CapEx locks you in.
It locks the technology in for years. Because you bought the physical hardware, you have to squeeze every ounce of value out of it before the CFO will let you buy new gear.
You can't just change your mind.
It requires highly accurate advanced capacity planning. If you guess wrong and buy too much server capacity, you wasted millions. If you buy too little, your website crashes during a holiday sale. CapEx is inherently rigid and less agile.
Now, contrast that rigidity with OpEx, or operating expenditures.
OpEx represents the ongoing day-to-day costs of running the business operations. In modern enterprise IT, this is the dominant model.
The cloud model.
OpEx encompasses your software as a service subscriptions, your hourly cloud computing cost in environments like AWS or Microsoft Azure, your internet utility bills, and your staff salaries.
You are renting the luxury hotel room, and you are paying for the water by the gallon. And the tax implications for the company are totally different.
Completely different. OpEx items are generally fully tax deductible in the year they are incurred. They hit the income statement directly as operating expenses without the complex multi-year amortization schedules of CapEx.
So let's bring this back to our rising IT leader. What is the strategic shift they have to master regarding CapEx and OpEx? Is it moving everything to the cloud and using OpEx always better because it's agile?
Not necessarily, and that is exactly the nuance an executive must grasp. The industry has indeed moved aggressively from CapEx-heavy on-premise data centers to OpEx-driven cloud models.
Because it's flexible?
OpEx provides massive instantaneous scalability. You can spin up 1,000 servers for a weekend marketing campaign and shut them down on Monday, paying only for what you used. You can pivot your entire technological stack without the burden of depreciating physical hardware. But OpEx introduces profound new risks.
Right, because if you leave the tap running, you bleed cash.
Exactly. You have to rigorously govern OpEx to prevent runaway subscription costs and vendor lock-in. It is incredibly easy for an engineering team to accidentally spin up unnecessary cloud resources and generate a massive, unexpected monthly bill.
A huge shock to the CFO.
A successful manager proves they have survived the missing middle and are ready for the CIO role when they can sit down with a CFO, intelligently debate the merits of a CapEx hardware refresh versus an OpEx cloud migration, and use those financial models to optimize the company's working capital.
It's a much higher level conversation.
You aren't just asking for money to buy servers. You are discussing how shifting a workload alters the company's tax liability and cash flow.
That is executive presence. When you can have that conversation, the CFO stops viewing you as an IT expense and starts viewing you as a strategic business partner.
It changes the entire relationship.
And that leads perfectly into the next crucial requirement for navigating the missing middle, cultivating the reputation of a change agent.
This is absolutely vital. To break through the gravity of middle management, you must deliberately, visibly build a personal brand as a catalyst for digital transformation and broad cultural alignment. You cannot hide in your IT silo. You have to be out in the business units.
The gap in corporate readiness here is staggering. The research highlights a survey showing that 90% of global managers and executives fully expect moderate to severe industry disruption from emerging technology in the near future.
90%. They know what's coming.
They know the wave is coming, but only 40% believe their organizations are actually prepared to survive it. The change agent is the leader who bridges that massive 50% gap between knowing the disruption is coming and actually preparing the workforce for it.
A change agent takes a high-level, abstract, strategic vision from the board and translates it into tactical, ground-level execution. They coordinate workflows across historically siloed departments.
Breaking down walls.
They anticipate technical roadblocks before they happen. But most importantly, they clearly and empathetically explain the tangible benefits of new systems to skeptical, anxious, and often fearful end users.
Let's talk about that fear. Technological disruption causes massive psychological anxiety among staff. People are terrified.
Change is scary.
They worry that a new AI tool will eliminate their job, or that they won't be able to learn a new complex software system and will look incompetent to their peers. The report explains a brilliant, highly practical communication framework to mitigate this anxiety called I-buy statements.
It is a communication framework driven by high emotional intelligence. When you are rolling out a massive change, you don't just announce it. You help individual department heads articulate exactly how they fit into the new reality.
You give them a script.
You give them a script for their own empowerment.
Let's give a concrete example. Imagine our CIO, Dave, is rolling out a massive new enterprise resource planning system.
A huge undertaking.
The director of finance is terrified because the new system changes how they run payroll, and if payroll breaks, there will be a riot. Instead of Dave just saying, "We are rolling out the new ERP on Tuesday, deal with it," Dave sits down with the finance director and helps them craft an I-buy statement.
Collaborative.
Dave says, I, the IT department, contribute to the successful adoption of this new ERP by migrating your historical data perfectly. You, the finance director, contribute to the adoption by identifying the specific payroll reporting gaps you need me to customize.
It beautifully articulates the impact of the change on the individual. It replaces ambiguity with specific shared responsibility.
It makes them a partner.
It directly addresses the root cause of their resistance, which is usually a feeling of powerlessness. If you, as an IT leader, can walk into any department, identify a workflow bottleneck, deploy technology to solve it, and do so while making the staff feel empowered rather than threatened, you are unequivocally proving you are ready for C-level authority.
So, if surviving the missing middle means learning how to manage the money and mitigate human anxiety, what happens when you actually get the keys to the castle?
The game changes again.
What are the specific demands placed on the Chief Information Officer in the year 2026? That brings us to Section 3, the 2026 CIO skill set.
The rapid, almost violent acceleration of artificial intelligence, coupled with increasingly complex regulatory environments and sophisticated cyber threats, has completely redefined the daily reality of the CIO.
It's a completely different job than it was 10 years ago.
The report makes a very clear, defining statement. Your technical skills get you an invitation to the executive table, but it is your executive presence that dictates your ability to command that table once you sit down.
They break this concept of executive presence down into a highly actionable framework called the 7 C's. Now, we aren't going to just rattle through all 7 like a PowerPoint presentation. I want us to deep dive into a few of the most critical ones because this is a masterclass in the soft skills that technical people often struggle with. Let's start with charisma.
Charisma is a tricky one.
I always thought charisma was an innate trait, like you're either born like Ryan Reynolds or you aren't. But the report says it's tactical.
It is entirely tactical. Technical experts often struggle with charisma because they are trained to interact with machines, which don't require emotional warmth, or they are highly introverted.
Which is fine for engineering.
But in leadership, charisma isn't about being the loudest person at the cocktail party or telling the best jokes. Charisma is the ability to inspire others by making them feel profoundly valued.
How do you do that tactically?
Tactically, it involves focusing entirely on the person speaking without rushing to fix their problem. It means actively suppressing the urge to interrupt them with your own personal anecdotes or immediate technical solutions.
Just listening.
When an employee comes to you with an issue, charismatic presence means giving them undivided, deeply rooted attention. You make them feel completely seen.
It's about being present, not performing. I love that. Let's look at another one, credibility. Obviously, you have to know your stuff to be credible, but the report gives a very specific linguistic hack for projecting credibility in a boardroom.
Yes, credibility is about earning deep trust through consistent behavior. But on a highly practical level, you project credibility by consciously stripping your vocabulary of minimizing filler words.
Words like just, maybe, or I think.
Exactly. Technical people often use these qualifiers because they know that in computer science there are always edge cases. They want to be factually accurate, so they hedge.
They don't want to be wrong.
But in a boardroom, hedging sounds like a lack of confidence. Instead of saying, I think maybe we should just look at this secondary vendor in case the primary one fails, an executive says, we will evaluate this secondary vendor to ensure redundancy.
That sounds so much stronger.
It is the exact same underlying thought, but the delivery projects definitive strength. You speak in active, declarative sentences.
That immediately changes how the CEO perceives your competence. Let's hit one more of the 7 C's. Clarity.
Clarity is communicating complex, highly nuanced concepts with total purpose and zero ambiguity. The rule of thumb the sources provide is the 10-word rule.
The 10-word rule.
Before you open your mouth in a high-stakes meeting, ask yourself, can I distill the core message I'm about to deliver into 10 words or less?
Which is incredibly hard for an engineer. Because an engineer wants to explain all the underlying architecture that leads up to the conclusion. They want to show their work.
But the board doesn't care about the architecture. They care about the business impact. If you bury your core expectation in 5 minutes of technical over-explanation, the board will lose the thread. Ensure your directives are simple, direct, and universally understood.
So we have charisma, credibility, clarity, along with composure, connection, confidence, and conciseness. Master those, and you elevate yourself from a back-office manager to a highly influential business partner.
You need all of them.
And you are going to need every ounce of that influence for the next massive mandate the report outlines, positioning the IT department as a direct revenue driver.
If we connect this to the broader trajectory of global business, the era of treating IT as a protective cost center, where the CIO's only goal was minimizing expenses and keeping the lights on, is decisively over.
The lights have to stay on, but that's not the goal anymore.
By 2026, a modern CIO is evaluated primarily by their ability to generate measurable outcomes that directly impact top-line corporate growth.
The report makes a fascinating point about the danger of the cost center mindset. It points out that optimizing purely for the lowest vendor cost often results in catastrophic hidden losses in staff productivity.
It's a false economy.
Right. If a CIO saves $100,000 by purchasing a cheap, clunky software platform, but that software takes a sales team twice as long to input their data, the company hasn't saved money at all. They have hemorrhaged value through lost sales velocity. The 2026 CIO optimizes for digital product creation, user experience, and time-to-market acceleration.
And we are seeing CIOs actively take ownership of core business growth mechanisms. It's no longer unthinkable for a CIO to oversee a massive lead-to-cash automation initiative, a project that historically would have been the exclusive domain of a chief revenue officer.
Because they own the data.
The CIO understands the data architecture required to automate that pipeline better than anyone else.
And the financial data backs this up massively. The report cites McKinsey and Company research finding that high-performing IT organizations, the ones operating as revenue drivers, drive up to 35% increased revenue growth compared to their peers.
35%.
35%. In a billion-dollar company, that is transformational. Successful CIOs are proactively creating what the report calls enterprise AI value playbooks. They are building expanded ROI models to show the board exactly how advanced tech decisions tied directly to revenue generation and margin expansion.
But, and this is a massive, but to achieve that revenue growth with artificial intelligence, the CIO must govern the technology properly.
The governance is the hard part.
Which brings us to one of the most pressing, chaotic challenges of 2026, governing agent sprawl and developing true AI fluency across the enterprise.
This section of the research absolutely blew my mind. We are moving incredibly fast from the era of human-prompted AI, where you type a question into a chatbot and wait for an answer, to the era of autonomous, task-specific AI agents operating independently across enterprise networks.
They are doing the work themselves.
And the projection from IDC is staggering. They project over 1 billion actively deployed AI agents globally by the year 2029. That is a 40-fold increase from 2025.
It is a Cambrian explosion of artificial intelligence. And without stringent, centralized architectural oversight, organizations instantly fall victim to agent sprawl.
It sounds chaotic.
It creates a chaotic, ungovernable digital environment. You have the marketing department deploying their own autonomous agent to optimize ad spend. The supply chain team spins up an agent to monitor shipping routes. HR deploys a bot to screen resumes.
Everyone gets a bot.
It creates a massive governance vacuum because none of these agents were built to talk to each other. These unmanaged, siloed agents act as a dangerous, highly autonomous new generation of shadow IT.
And the financial risk is very real, right? The
Right.
report uses the term token hemorrhaging. Let's build a scenario. Imagine the marketing department's AI agent is programmed to scrape employee performance data to build a new internal campaign.
Okay.
But the HR department's AI agent is programmed to fiercely protect that exact same data for privacy compliance.
So the marketing agent pings the HR database.
Mm-hmm.
The HR agent blocks it. The marketing agent tries a different vector. The HR agent blocks it again.
And they just keep fighting.
They get locked in an infinite microsecond combat loop.
And because the company pays the cloud provider for every single API call, every single compute cycle those agents use to fight each other, this invisible battle quietly chews through $50,000 of the company's cloud budget over a single weekend. Token hemorrhaging.
It happens so fast.
So how does the CIO actually govern a billion digital entities?
They have to implement robust, enterprise-wide orchestration frameworks. The industry experts in the research strongly recommend deploying architectural blueprints like the Maestro framework.
Let's deep dive into Maestro without sounding like an instruction manual. What are the core conceptual pillars of this orchestration blueprint? How do you herd a billion digital cats?
It involves 4 critical sequential steps. First is inventory and audit. Before you can govern, you must have visibility. The CIO must map every single active agent on the network, identify its underlying large language model, and strictly define its specific data access permissions.
You have to know what is out there.
Second is standardized communication. You have to implement universal integration protocols so all these disparate departmental agents can actually speak a common language and understand each other's intent.
Okay, so they know who is on the network and they can talk to each other. What's next?
Third is defining hierarchy. This is crucial. You establish a centralized control plane. Essentially, you deploy a highly secure master agent that holds final, unyielding veto power over all autonomous actions taken by subordinate departmental agents.
A digital boss.
If the marketing agent wants to spend $100 grand on ad buys, the master agent has to clear the logic. And fourth is centralized logging. You funnel all agent telemetry and decision trees into a single, immutable, real-time dashboard.
So you have a record.
When something goes wrong, the CIO needs to be able to look at the logs and understand exactly who did what and mathematically why the agent made that decision.
By treating AI orchestration as critical foundational infrastructure rather than a novelty, the CIO ensures the AI remains compliant, financially cost-effective, and strictly aligned with the overarching business goals.
It is about building the traffic lights and the highways before you let a billion autonomous cars onto the road.
And speaking of keeping things on the road, we cannot discuss the 2026 CIO without examining the darkest cloud on the horizon. Cybersecurity.
In 2026, cybersecurity is no longer viewed as merely an IT operational task or a technical nuisance. It is a paramount, existential, boardroom-level business and financial risk.
It can end a company.
The velocity, scale, and sophistication of cyber threats have been completely supercharged by the exact same artificial intelligence the enterprise is trying to adopt. The attackers have AI too.
We are seeing highly targeted AI-driven social engineering campaigns at scale. We are seeing flawless deepfake video and voice impersonations of executives tricking finance departments into wiring millions of dollars.
It's terrifyingly good.
We are seeing the deliberate data poisoning of the large language models we just talked about, where hackers subtly manipulate the training data so the company's AI starts making malicious decisions. The enterprise attack surface is massive and porous. IBM reports that 16% of massive data breaches now directly involve AI-driven attacks.
16%.
And an Aon corporate survey ranks cyber risk as the absolute #1 risk to global business through 2028.
This relentless threat landscape requires the modern CIO to adopt a posture of preemptive resilience. The old model of building a massive firewall around the company's traditional perimeter defense is dead.
The perimeter is gone.
The attackers are already inside. Preemptive resilience means ensuring absolute business continuity, even during an active, ongoing cyber incident. It requires the CIO to champion advanced concepts like machine identity management, confidential computing environments, and zero-trust architectures natively into the business roadmap.
You assume you are breached.
You assume breach, and you engineer the company to survive it.
And here's a terrifying point for any rising executive listening to this: the personal liability. Under new mandates from regulatory bodies like the SEC, executives and boards of directors face far stricter cyber disclosure rules.
You go to jail.
We are talking about actual personal legal liability for corporate officers if they fail to adequately protect consumer data or disclose breaches promptly. It is the CIO's heavy, non-delegable responsibility to translate obscure technical security metrics into crystal clear business risk profiles for the board.
You are not just reading NIST compliance guidelines to check a box for an auditor. You are implementing those frameworks to keep your CEO out of a congressional Senate hearing when your data gets compromised.
You are the shield.
You have to assure the board with empirical evidence that the enterprise can withstand a massive digital shock without suffering catastrophic reputational or financial damage.
To manage all of this, the revenue generation expectations, the chaotic AI agent sprawl, the looming SEC cyber regulations, the modern CIO requires immense structured educational preparation and unparalleled interpersonal skill.
You can't just wing this.
You really can't. Which takes us to Section 4, the Master's Edge, Education, and EQ.
As the demands on the C-suite grow exponentially, the educational credentials required to get through the door are under intense, renewed scrutiny.
What's the best path?
There is a massive ongoing debate outlined in the sources regarding the optimal path for a rising tech leader. Do you pursue a broad, generalist Master of Business Administration, an MBA, or do you pursue a highly specialized, deeply technical degree like a Master of Science in Information Systems, an MSIS?
Let's objectively compare these two pathways because they cater to very different cultural profiles and strategic outcomes. Let's look at the MBA first.
The MBA is the classic, universally recognized credential for building broad organizational leadership and general business acumen. If you get an MBA, you are studying macroeconomics, corporate finance, marketing strategy, human resources management, and organizational behavior.
It's very broad.
Right. And because the curriculum is so broad, MBA graduates often pursue high-level management consulting or cross-industry general management roles. They want to be able to run a logistics company one year and a healthcare conglomerate the next.
And they usually get paid well for it.
Historically, they do see a higher initial starting salary straight out of the program, with the U.S. median hovering near $115,000 for generalist management roles.
But the report highlights a significant trade-off. For professionals who are singularly intent on reaching the absolute apex of technology leadership, specifically the CIO, Chief Technology Officer, or Chief Data Officer roles, the MBA can sometimes leave them technically exposed.
That's the danger.
If you spend 2 years studying macroeconomics, your technical edge blunts.
And that is exactly why, as someone affiliated with the Dr. Sampak College of Business at Tarleton State University, I am so passionate about the pathways we've structured. We recognize that tech leaders need a very specific blend. The MSIS is increasingly recognized in 2026 as the definitive gold standard for enterprise tech leaders.
Tell us more about how those programs are structured.
We have several undergraduate paths, like the BBA in Management Information Systems for that technical business balance, the BAS in Information Technology for working professionals, and the BS in Computer Information Systems for a deep technical dive. But when we look at the executive level, our Master of Science in Information Systems is surgically designed to bridge that exact technical business gap we've been discussing all episode.
It connects the dots.
It combines advanced business theory with deep, rigorous training in IT project management, enterprise cloud architecture, advanced cybersecurity governance, and predictive data analytics.
The cultural fit is different. The MSIS is for the person who still wants to understand how the engine works while simultaneously learning how to drive the race car. And the long-term ROI data the report provides is fascinating.
It really is.
The initial starting salary for an MSIS graduate might be slightly lower, perhaps around $95,000. But graduates with an MSIS experience a 15% faster salary growth rate over a 5-year period compared to generic MBAs in tech-driven industries.
Because their highly specialized knowledge becomes incredibly scarce and valuable as technology accelerates. Furthermore, the data shows that 35% of these specialized degree holders experience a promotion to an executive-level role within 3 years of graduation.
That's a huge accelerator.
If you want to remain deeply technically grounded while mastering corporate strategy and financial fluency, the MSIS provides a much sharper, more precise edge in 2026.
And there is another crucial element to the MSIS curriculum that directly addresses the boardroom risks we just talked about: academic integrity and boardroom counsel. The degree explicitly trains leaders to act as formal governance and risk officers.
It grounds students deeply in vital, internationally recognized governance frameworks. We are talking about KRSO-ERM for Enterprise Risk Management, ISO 31000 standards, and the NIST AI Risk Management Framework.
And again, to tie it back to the real world, they aren't memorizing these acronyms for a test. They're learning how to use these frameworks as a shield.
The predictive shield.
They learn how to establish internal AI ethics boards. They study how to actively mitigate algorithmic bias in their machine learning models so the company doesn't get sued for discriminatory lending practices. They learn how to architect systems that natively comply with global privacy laws. When an MSIS graduate stands before a board of directors, they have unimpeachable, structurally sound governance credentials.
But, and this is perhaps the most important pivot in our entire discussion, all of that structural knowledge, all of those frameworks, all of the architectural brilliance means absolutely nothing if you do not possess the soft skills to actually deploy it within a human organization.
You have to know how to deal with people.
This brings us to the immense measurable ROI of emotional intelligence, or EQ.
Here is where it gets really interesting. The massive empirical validation of human-centric soft skills is perhaps the most startling evolution in the leadership pipeline. Historically, soft skills were viewed as a nice-to-have bonus. Now, they are the core metric.
They are everything.
Gartner's predictive modeling indicates that by 2026, 70% of a CIO's success depends entirely on their ability to foster high-performing teams and lead with emotional intelligence, rather than relying on their raw technical authority.
70%. Let that sink in. Because as AI absorbs all the routine coding, the basic analytical tasks, and the deterministic problem solving, the enterprise becomes desperate for the distinctly human capabilities that an algorithm cannot replicate.
Like what?
Nuanced ethical judgment, high empathy, and the ability to collaboratively influence complex groups of people.
But EQ is incredibly hard to learn for someone who has spent 15 years talking to machines. Machines don't have bad days. Machines don't get defensive when you point out a bug.
People do?
If a manager lacks EQ and they shut down a junior engineer's idea harshly in a meeting, that engineer checks out. And the financial ROI of preventing that is totally measurable.
It is entirely measurable. Gallup data shows that managers account for a staggering 70% of the variance in team engagement. Think about that. 70% of whether an employee cares about their job or is quietly quitting comes down entirely to their direct manager.
That is a massive responsibility.
Emotionally intelligent managers who actively foster psychological safety, where employees feel safe taking risks and admitting mistakes without fear of retribution, lead teams that are 21% more productive and experience 59% less employee turnover.
Empathy is a financial metric. Preventing a senior engineer from quitting saves the company hundreds of thousands of dollars in recruitment and lost productivity. The report even notes that targeted leadership coaching to develop these EQ skills yields a 788% ROI when you factor in those productivity gains, the retention of top talent, and organizational agility.
It pays for itself over and over.
EQ is the precise mechanism that translates a brilliant architectural design on a whiteboard into an enthusiastically supported reality on the engineering floor.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Because technical brilliance, an MSIS degree, and high EQ form the foundation. But true, rapid career acceleration comes from relationship capital.
We are entering the final major section of our deep dive, Section 5, Strategic Networking, and the Career Accelerator.
A future CIO cannot afford to be insular. You cannot just keep your head down, do good work, and hope someone notices.
Yeah.
You must actively build a robust, high-value professional ecosystem beyond the walls of your immediate organization.
You have to get out there.
And in an increasingly remote and digital world, this requires deliberate physical immersion in the localized ecosystems where industry transformation is actively occurring.
Networking sounds so superficial to a lot of technical people. They picture handing out glossy business cards at a hotel bar while eating bad appetizers. But if that is your definition, you are are doing it entirely wrong.
It's not about the appetizers.
The report gives a phenomenal, concrete example of what strategic networking actually looks like. The Convergence AI Dallas conference taking place in March 2026 at the Irving Convention Center. This isn't just a generic tech meetup.
No, it is a strategic networking powerhouse hosted by the Dallas Regional Chamber. It specifically positions the Dallas-Fort Worth area as a premier national hub for the applied, enterprise-level deployment of AI.
Right in our backyard.
It gathers 800 highly influential business, HR, and tech leaders in one physical space. And critically, it moves far beyond the theoretical hype of AI to focus relentlessly on measurable ROI and practical implementation across finance, healthcare, and critical infrastructure.
It features high-level headline sessions. The report specifically highlights entrepreneur Mark Cuban delivering a keynote on AI literacy and what he calls the fading era of static sauce, which provides critical, actionable foresight into where market trajectories are heading over the next 5 years.
For an aspiring CIO, attending an event like this is a structural career accelerator. Engaging deeply in expert-led table talks, attending the public sector AI workshop, or networking intensely at the Dallas Innovates AI 75 reception allows you to benchmark your own internal corporate progress against broader cross-industry standards.
You see how you measure up.
You break out of your internal company silo, you expose yourself to diverse strategic viewpoints, and you establish yourself as a deeply connected industry player who is highly visible to elite recruiters and future employers.
Physical presence matters, especially in an AI-dominated world. Which brings us to the internal corporate hierarchy and the absolute necessity of understanding relationship capital within your own company. The report points out a critical, often fatal failing of mid-level tech managers. They fundamentally conflate mentorship with sponsorship.
This raises an important question. What is the actual difference between a mentor and a sponsor? And why does confusing the two stall career progression, particularly for underrepresented groups in the technology sector?
Let's differentiate them very clearly.
Because they serve entirely different purposes. Mentorship is fundamentally about guidance, reflection, and internal skill building. It is a private, safe, confidential relationship.
A mentor talks to you. They are a sounding board. If Dave is struggling with the lingering trap, he talks to his mentor. His mentor helps him navigate the challenge, improves his self-awareness, and gives him advice over coffee.
And mentorship is incredibly valuable.
Right. The data shows mentees are promoted 5 times more often than non-participants. But it's not the ultimate accelerator for reaching the C-suite.
Right. Mentorship builds your internal readiness. It gets you ready for the job. Sponsorship, on the other hand, is the single most critical accelerator for actually securing executive promotion. Sponsorship is highly public, explicit advocacy by someone with significant organizational power.
A sponsor doesn't just give you advice. A sponsor talks about you in rooms you aren't allowed in yet.
Exactly. They are spending their own hard-earned social capital and professional reputation on your behalf. A sponsor is the senior executive in the closed-door talent review board who forcefully argues for your promotion.
They pound the table for you.
They demand you be included in critical succession planning. They actively nominate you for high-visibility stretch assignments that will prove your worth to the CEO. While mentorship prepares you for leadership, sponsorship actually converts that readiness into tangible, career-defining opportunity.
And the data here is incredibly compelling. The report notes that sponsored individuals earn 11.6% more compensation over their peers. Furthermore, women and minorities with active sponsors are 27% more likely to be promoted to executive roles in tech firms, effectively providing the leverage necessary to break through the corporate glass ceiling.
You absolutely need both to reach the top. You leverage trusted mentors to build the bilingual and emotional competencies in private, and you secure a powerful sponsor who is willing to definitively stake their professional reputation on your executive potential in public.
Okay, let's bring all of this together for a final recap of the massive territory we've covered today. Today, we have unpacked a profound, multi-year professional evolution.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started by examining the hands-on sysadmin, clutching the keyboard, battling the deep psychological anxiety of the expert's trap and the lingering trap. We navigated the complex, dangerous waters of the missing middle, realizing that survival requires mastering the strategic financial manipulation of CapEx and OpEx and deliberately adopting the empathetic persona of a cross-functional change agent.
And we finally arrived in the 2026 boardroom, examining the incredibly rare trilingual CIO, A leader who utilizes the 7 C's of executive presence to command the room, who directly drives corporate revenue, who strictly governs complex AI agents sprawl through frameworks like Maestro, and who acts as the primary, highly credible counselor to the board on cybersecurity risk.
We validated the critical measurable edge provided by an MSIS degree and executive EQ, and we highlighted the undeniable power of strategic local networking and aggressive executive sponsorship.
It is a profoundly challenging, incredibly complex, and remarkably impactful career trajectory. It requires constant, relentless evolution.
To you, the listener, whether you are a junior engineer or a mid-level director staring at the C-suite, remember this. Ascending to the absolute top of the technology pipeline is no longer about the flawless code you write. It is entirely about the human and systemic influence you wield.
Influence over control.
You must be willing to let go of direct tactile control to master the highly nuanced, deeply human art of influencing organizational behavior at massive scale. As a modern CIO, you are securing not just the digital infrastructure, but the entire competitive future and legal safety of your enterprise.
And for those listeners who are genuinely motivated to take that next step, I invite you to explore the programs at the Dr. Sam Pack College of Business at Tarleton State University. It's an incredibly strong investment for those who are ready for a program that blends flexibility, practical learning, and future-focused career preparation.
A great opportunity. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final, forward-looking thought to ponder on your own based on the realities we've explored today. We talked extensively about governing AI agent sprawl, using the Maestro framework, and deploying a master agent to control the billions of subordinate AI agents.
Right.
If we actually reach a point in the near future where these AI master agents are successfully and autonomously governing the billions of subordinate AI agents that handle all daily technological operations, what does the CIO of 2030 actually manage? Are they managing technology at all, or have they purely become behavioral psychologists for artificial intelligence?
A truly fascinating question as we look toward the next era of innovation.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Make sure to tune in next week for episode 11, our registration special, Mapping Your MSIS Degree Path. Take ownership of your leadership pipeline, embrace the uncomfortable transitions, and keep learning. We will see you next time.